Okay, so have you heard about this new schizophrenia drug? It's got everyone talking, and for good reason, too.
Yeah, it's not every day something groundbreaking in mental health treatment comes along.
Right. And this isn't just a small change. It's a totally new approach.
It's called Cobenfy. It used to be known as CAR-XT during development, and it could be huge for adults dealing with schizophrenia.
We're talking a total paradigm shift. For years, it's been the same old, same old, same old. But this is different.
Cobenfy works nothing like those typical antipsychotics. Instead of going after the dopamine receptors in the brain, it targets the cholinergic system, specifically these things called muscarinic receptors.
Muscarinic receptors. Sounds kind of complicated.
It is complex, but imagine this. Those old antipsychotics are like trying to fix a flickering light bulb by messing with the lampshade, not the wiring.
They're missing the root cause then.
Precisely. Cobenfy's intriguing because it goes straight to that faulty wiring.
So it actually addresses the problem. This is like something out of a medical detective show.
And there's a twist. Cobenfy uses xanomeline, which was initially researched for Alzheimer's.
Really?
Eli Lilly, they were looking at it for Alzheimer's, and it seemed promising for those psychosis symptoms you often see.
But then?
There's always a but, right? Turns out, xanomeline came with a whole bunch of side effects.
Oh no, I bet.
Yeah, because the cholinergic system, it's not just in the brain, it's everywhere.
So it was helping the brain but causing problems
Uh,
elsewhere.
You got it like putting out a fire with gasoline. So Eli Lilly, they had to shelve it.
I see. So where does Karuna Therapeutics come in? They're the ones who brought us Cobenfy, right?
That's them. They found a workaround, a way to make xanomeline work without the chaos.
Okay, you've got to tell me more.
They took xanomeline and mixed it with a drug usually used for overactive bladder, trospium chloride.
Interesting. But why?
Here's the genius part. Trospium chloride, it can't get past the blood-brain barrier. That's like the brain's security checkpoint.
So it blocks the xanomeline from wreaking havoc outside the brain while still letting it work inside.
Exactly. Outside the box thinking, and the results are promising. In clinical trials, Cobenfy significantly improved those symptom severity scores.
How much are we talking?
We're talking up to 9 points, which is significant.
9 points. That's huge.
Yeah.
For listeners who don't know about these scores, that's not just a small tweak. This could mean not only are the hallucinations targeted, but maybe even things like motivation and social engagement improve, right?
You've got it. It's like Cobenfy turns down the volume on the worst parts of schizophrenia so people can actually live their lives.
That's incredible. Now let's talk about schizophrenia itself for a moment. What exactly is it?
Schizophrenia, it's a chronic, severe mental illness. It's more common than you might think.
And it's not just what we see in the movies.
No, not at all. It's a lot more than hallucinations. It's also delusions, these really strong beliefs that aren't real.
So someone might think they have superpowers, even though there's no way, right?
Right. And besides those, there are negative symptoms, like a lack of motivation, wanting to be alone all the time, not enjoying things.
That sounds so isolating.
It is. Makes it hard to work, have relationships, even just get through the day. And then, on top of all that, there's cognitive dysfunction. Affects memory, focus, decision-making.
So it really impacts every part of life. And this is where the old treatments, while well-intentioned, they just haven't been enough.
But they target dopamine, so while they might help with some of the hallucinations and delusions, they don't usually touch the negative and cognitive stuff.
So even on meds, people are still struggling.
Unfortunately, yes. And then you add the side effects of those old antipsychotics, weight gain, diabetes risk, movement problems.
Movement problems like what?
Tremors, muscles locking up, even something called tardive dyskinesia.
We should probably explain that one. What is
Yeah.
tardive dyskinesia?
It causes these movements you can't control, often in the face and tongue, and it can be permanent even after stopping the medication.
That's awful. No wonder some people just stop treatment altogether, even if it means going back to the original symptoms.
I know, it's a tough choice. The side effects can be worse than the illness itself, leading to this cycle of starting and stopping meds, which just disrupts life even more.
That's why the early results for Cobenfy are so exciting. It's not just a new way of doing things, it also seems to have fewer side effects.
And these trials included people who hadn't responded well to other antipsychotics.
So for those who felt hopeless, this offered them some hope.
It did. Of course, it's still early. We need more research, especially on the long-term effects. But still, there's a lot of excitement.
I can imagine. But even with all this, we can't forget that every drug has its downsides. What about Cobenfy's side effects? What do people need to know?
Right, we have to be honest about the potential downsides, even with something this promising. No medication's perfect, and people need to know that.
Of course. So tell me, What did those trials show about Cobenfy's side effects?
Well, the good news is that compared to a lot of the current antipsychotics, Cobenfy seems to have fewer side effects. Mostly things like nausea, upset stomach, constipation, sometimes vomiting.
Not fun, but definitely better than some of the serious stuff we talked about, like those uncontrolled movements.
Exactly. But there are a few things to watch out for. Cobenfy can, in some cases, cause urinary retention, make your heart race a bit, and some people experience swelling, especially in the face and lips.
That sounds scary. What should people do if they notice those things happening?
It's all about talking to your doctor. These side effects were all part of the trials, so it's not about being afraid, just informed. If someone notices those symptoms, they should call their doctor right away to figure out what to do.
Stay aware and don't hesitate to reach out if something feels off. Are there certain people who should be extra careful with Cobenfy?
Yes, so people with moderate to severe kidney problems or those with even mild to moderate liver issues, they shouldn't take Cobenfy.
And why is that?
Your liver and kidneys, they filter out medications. If those aren't working right, the drug could build up and cause even more problems.
So it's about carefully weighing the pros and cons.
Exactly. That's a conversation for the patient and their doctor. They need someone who understands their medical history to advise them.
It really shows how important that one-on-one approach is rather than just assuming everyone's the same.
Absolutely. Mental health, just like physical health, it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
Treatment should reflect that.
It's like you wouldn't treat every headache the same, right? Some need an over-the-counter pill, some need something stronger, and some need to figure out why they're getting headaches in the first place.
Exactly. And it's the same with mental health. There's no magic solution. But with more awareness, more research, and that focus on individual care, we're getting closer.
Speaking of solutions, Cobenfy's story isn't just about schizophrenia. It's opened up these whole new avenues for researching other neurological problems.
It really has. For instance, they're looking into Cobenfy for treating the psychosis you sometimes see with Alzheimer's disease.
So it could potentially help with those hallucinations and delusions that Alzheimer's patients experience.
That's the idea. And that would be huge, not only for the patients, but for their families and caregivers, too. They're often the ones dealing with those difficult changes.
It sounds like Cobenfy is really changing how we think about the brain, how it works, and how we treat these complex conditions.
It's a major development, not just one drug for one illness, but potentially transforming our understanding of the brain and how we approach mental health treatment.
Which brings up something I'm sure our listeners are wondering. This all sounds great, but when can people actually get Cobenfy? That's the big question, right? FDA approval is great, but it doesn't mean you can just pick up Cobenfy at the drugstore tomorrow. So what's the deal?
Well, Bristol Myers Squibb, they're the company that makes Cobenfy, and they're working on getting it out there as fast as they can. They even announced this patient support program, Cobenfy Cares.
Cobenfy Cares. What's that all about?
Basically, it's there to help people who are prescribed Cobenfy. They'll give you information, resources, help with insurance, explain side effects, that kind of thing.
So no firm date yet, but it sounds like they're on it. But even with all this, we have to remember that medication isn't a magic cure for something as complex as schizophrenia, right?
Definitely not. It's not a one-and-done solution. It works best alongside other treatments, therapy, support groups, lifestyle changes. All those things matter for a good quality of life.
So it's about empowering people, not just masking symptoms.
Absolutely. And that's why these conversations are so important. Talking openly about mental health, fighting the stigma, getting the word out about new treatments, it all helps create a more supportive environment.
We've covered a lot today, from the science behind Cobenfy to its potential impact on how we treat mental illness in the future. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. If we can see this kind of breakthrough after decades of very little progress, what else is out there waiting to be discovered?
That's a great question. I mean, think about it. Cobenfy's story really challenges the way we think about developing new drugs. They took this old idea, xanomeline, combined it with a medication used for something totally different, and boom, potential game changer. It makes you wonder what else is hiding in plain sight.
Like we've been stuck on one path for so long, we haven't looked for other ways to get there.
Exactly. We need that scientific curiosity, that willingness to think differently, challenge what we think we know, and explore new possibilities, especially with something as complicated as the human brain.
It's a call to action for all of us, scientists, pharmaceutical companies, policymakers, even everyday people. We need to keep asking questions, keep pushing for progress, and never stop demanding better understanding and better treatments for mental health.
And most importantly, We need to listen to the people who live with these conditions every day. They're the real experts. Their experiences should be guiding research and shaping the future of mental health care.
Well said. And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive informative and maybe even a bit inspiring. Knowledge is power, and the more we understand about mental health, the better we can support ourselves and everyone around us.
And if you're curious to